Hi, thank you for joining us. We're back with another Fireside chat, and this time we're joined by Elliot Turner. So thank you, Elliot, for joining us, and for just kind of to get some quick things out of the way before we get to our conversation. I am your host, Louie Vargas. I'm also the founder of the Network for Financial Crime Prevention. If you don't know who we are and you're not a member or you're not following us, please do so. We're on LinkedIn where all of our content is, so please follow us there. If you would like to become a member or like just want to find out more about us, you could go to our website, which is nfcp.info. And yeah, we're basically a community for you, by you. So what our biggest mission is to help uplift compliance officers just like you to learn and grow in your space and to create a safe place for that. And part of the Fireside Chat podcasts we do is to talk to professionals in the field who have done different things in their career, but all great things. And we just thought it'd be great to bring those experiences to you. So before we hand over the mic to Elliot, just some quick housekeeping. Whatever we discuss today is our opinion. Please don't take anything we say as legal advice. We're just having a conversation. So if you do have specific questions, please raise that internally to your compliance officers. Again, we're just providing details for informational and learning purposes only. And with that said, I think we're good to get going. So again, thank you very much, Elliot, for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Louis, and hello to everyone who's going to be watching. I really appreciate this opportunity, Louis. I think all the work you've been doing has been great. I think uplifting, as you say, is great to kind of help everyone, because we are a community, and it's good that we can connect and help each other rather than kind of compete with each other. And I think it's great that you enable that. Very quickly, for everyone who doesn't know me, my name's Elliott Turner. I'm the founder of the Creative Compliance Officer. So I do joke that I'm a CCO, but as Louis said, and I'll put a disclaimer on that, I'm not really a CCO, but it's just a bit of tongue in cheek. The C that is different there is the creative compliance officer. I try and bring what I call structured creativity to the fore. So by that, it really is trying to kind of have that intersect between compliance and events. And what I largely do, please have a look at my LinkedIn profile if you want to know more, or go to the website, is more virtual events, but I've also done conferences and do conferences. Video production is something I'm working on. Louis and I were talking just before we started. It's a bit of a learning curve, but I love doing it and love being able to bring everyone's voices together. In short, that's really what the Creative Compliance Officer is about. It's about building platforms for voices, for topics that matter for the community. I think that's a key word, Louis. Prior to that, I won't go into a huge background, but my background is that I've spent nearly 20 years working in compliance and risk roles, mostly in the UK. Well, say mostly, I forget how long I've been in South Africa. So I'm an Essex boy, for anyone who can relate to that. From the UK, and live here in Joburg now for about 12 years. So there's a split, but most of that has been in compliance and risk roles between London and Joburg. So I try and bring compliance and over that to creativity. And it's been a real pleasure that I get to meet with so many different people and characters who I never thought I would, yourself included, Louis. So it's all good.
Yeah, thanks for that, Elliot. And yeah, we've known each other for a few years now. It's hard to believe, but yeah, it's been a few years. We haven't met in person yet, but hopefully that'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But we've been, I feel like we've become friends virtually, and we've stayed in contact. And I thank you for that introduction. But a lot of people, and this is something we also quickly spoke about, a lot of people probably don't know you because you're rarely in front of the camera, though you are doing that a bit more with some of your advertisements for ICA events. But yeah, you've been very instrumental with putting together ICA events and other events throughout our community. So people probably don't know you directly, but they've probably seen your work. So that's exactly why I wanted to kind of put a spotlight on what you're doing, because it's very important. Because, sometimes when you're behind the scenes, you don't get the appreciation you need and should, and you deserve. And yeah, you bring a lot to the table. So that's why I thought it'd be great to speak to somebody who's done different things in the realm of the compliance space, so people could be inspired.
That's really cool to be here. So I appreciate it. As Louis said, usually behind the camera. So this is new for me today. It's usually like videos, as Louis has said, more recently for the International Compliance Association and others. So I'm trying to make good use of the mic, and I've even got one of those circular lights in front of me now. So Louis. And my beach shirt from last week that my kids insist that I should be wearing.
I was thinking that. I was like, you could tell we're in different climates because I have this heavily knitted sweater and you have this Hawaiian shirt on. So, yeah, it perfectly illustrates where we're sitting today.
Yeah,
I'm very jealous.
The Nordic winter does not have mosquitoes, so that's a big advantage.
So Elliot, yeah, let's just jump into it. So the first question I have is, you describe yourself as the jack of all trades, part compliance expert, part events producer, part creative strategist. That's quite an unusual combination. So I'm just curious, how do these worlds collide for you?
Great question. I think a lot of it actually goes back to even before I worked in compliance. And I think like a lot of people who when you ask them, how did you get into compliance? Maybe not nowadays, but if we go back sort of 10, 15, 20 years, is they'll say that they kind of stumbled into it. So you didn't plan it? No, not really. Do you want to do something now? No. You stumbled into it, but you want to stay because you're like, this is awesome. But no one had this clear path, which is, I think, why it's good nowadays that there's a lot more opportunity, and everything that you do through the NFCP helps because it kind of gives some clarity and direction. But before bit, got a painting behind me. I trained to be an expedition leader in a rainforest reserve in Tanzania, and adventure, sort of pioneering, and that kind of mindset was very big for me. But then you also had kind of this ingrained responsibility. Sort of like, okay, actually got offered a job in, not many people know this, but in Madagascar many years ago to kind of lead some expedition work, take scientists to different places and make sure that they come out in one piece and stuff like that, and encourage them a little bit. So that sense of adventure, I think, is partly the driver of this. And moving to South Africa, where there's very much a different culture and mindset. So this phrase that any South Africans who might be listening now will understand is make a plan. And it comes from Afrikaans, the Boer farmers, the maka plan. In fact, I'm probably butchering the Afrikaans here, but anyway, make a plan. So you've kind of got this very entrepreneurial mindset. And then way back when I was still studying before uni, I studied art. So kind of being creative is always something I enjoyed. And by accident, all these three things kind of collided. As you say, I always had ideas about doing something and never quite did. Unfortunately, with the market conditions, got made redundant from the bank I was working at. What do? I want to do something. I'm very passionate about wildlife and the outdoors. So I did this webinar series about how financial crime and wildlife overlap, and some of the things that are happening, terrible really, but like the illegal wildlife trade, deforestation. So I what do? I'd really like to do something. I wrote a program for a webinar series called Wildlife Crime is Financial Crime. Shared it with a couple of people because I was looking for a platform. I managed to get that platform through the ICA and a consulting firm here called Navigate Compliance, and I ran it. I managed to get all sorts of people there. United for Wildlife, which is a big NGO, we'll discuss a little bit about later. The Prince William's Royal Foundation in the UK, a number of other NGOs, the Interpol, World Trade Organization, bankers, you name it. In terms of public-private players, everyone.
Wow.
And then some other people started to reach out to me after that. But did you do that by yourself? Yeah. Because like we were talking about having that passion and energy, that this was something that I really had. And I got a real buzz in a way that, wow, I'm getting to talk to all these different people. Kind of, we're engaging and like, oh, Elliot, can I do this? Can I do that? And I wasn't really sure what to do. But I was like, yeah, sure. Because I knew it was a platform. And from there, more opportunities came along. And I think that's where the concept of, I could go on a lot longer, but I won't. I'm going to try and keep these answers short, even if it doesn't feel like it. No, wrap it up. But, no, how that kind of happened was that I had a background in compliance. I had a passion, and still do, for like conservation and wildlife. And I wanted to try and figure out how could I use my skill set to work in that space and support it and try and do something that matters. And I accidentally stumbled into events and I've enjoyed it ever since. And that was for a particular course. But since then, you know how many different kind of topics and themes that you can cover in this space, Louis. And lots of people do it. So you want to try and stand out a bit. And I think that's where the creativity came in. It's like, well, how do we do this differently? And it's like a whole new space. So I felt like I was on a bit of an adventure. So that's why this is from a market in Nepal. I bought and got framed when I went mountaineering, and every now and then I'll have a look at that to myself and think, no, I made it up. That's not the exact mountain, but I made it up. That sense of really pushing yourself, that's what this is all about for me.
Wow, that's awesome. And I didn't know that about you, that story. So thank you for also sharing it with me. But it also proves, I mean, it definitely makes sense. And I could see the kind of connection there. And I love the inspiration that you also keep next to you, because what we do is a thankless job, right? So it has to come from passion and keeping yourself motivated. So it's interesting to see how you've been able to do that throughout your career. So,
yeah, sense of adventure. I've got a book here. I did have a book here. Is it still there? It's over on my shelf over there. Grab that great book. This guy, it's a sir now, but ran off. So when I was working in London, I asked my then manager at the time, please can I go to this book signing? Because this guy is like a big inspiration for me. After having a heart bypass, not soon after, he ran something like, I don't know if it was 5 or 7 marathons in consecutive days. And he asked the doctor for their advice, and they're like, well, I don't know, because no one's ever done that. And he did all these adventures, and he found a lost city, and he's climbed Everest, and he's done like poles. And the guy in the office was like, well, who? You don't know who this guy is. So I go to the bookshop at the time, which was near St. Paul's Cathedral in the courtyard area there. And I walk in, and I'm like, oh, no, man, I'm like 10 minutes late. There's going to be queues. There was no one there. I had an audience with this guy who was like a bit of a hero of mine, and a signed copy. And it's random, but that's a big inspiration for me. And in my work is that sense of adventure, because I guess everyone has their own drivers. And for me, in my mind, I'm pretending that I'm Indiana Jones. I'm working on a webinar program or something like that. I love that sense of adventure and pushing and finding new things or different ways of doing the same thing, which is where the creativity comes in. The structure is, I've worked in compliance and risk for a long time, and who doesn't like a framework? Yeah.
So that I guess that's what I like to go to next is, you talked about kind of what shaped you and what kind of shapes your current environment when it comes to this type of work. Now talking about your career in compliance. So you started out in RBS and back in 27. Sorry, did I lose you? No worries. So you started out your career in RBS in 2007, right before the financial crisis. And I guess what it's like from your perspective being in the financial crime compliance space during such a pivotal moment, and how do you feel it shaped you and the industry?
It was a very... Oh, Louis, I'm so sorry. I just need to quickly plug in my laptop. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry.
And most of that will be cut out.
Sorry, I didn't actually notice that. So it's kind of so engrossed when we were talking earlier. I didn't realise what I had done. Sorry. No, that's a fantastic question around RBS. It was an interesting time working in that environment. I think what also made it more interesting for me was it was the very beginning of like my career. I got maybe less than 2 years under my belt, and we're smacked in the face with what we now recognise as the global financial crisis, essentially, and everyone's kind of energy levels you could see working at RBS at the time, because RBS and NatWest, sort of being part of a wider group, were quite heavily hit by what happened. Like their books were hit quite hard. So at one stage it looked like they were going to get like bailout from the government. Share prices were dropping to silly levels. You would see some people talking about trying to take advantage of where the stock markets were. So, we're going to buy these shares and those shares. And really, it was like being in this environment where all these different things were happening, which were so unusual for someone to be in. And it was a little bit of a distraction at the time in terms of, getting on with your work, because you're being distracted by everything that's happening around you. That, I think, was the biggest impact for me, was not even so much around working in financial crime at that point. I was a KYC analyst when I first began. It was how the work environment was changing, because people were worried about their jobs. There were kind of mass redundancies, and you're wondering if you're going to be next, as it were. So it was that was a big learning curve, being in that environment. In terms of working in financial crime, it was almost business as usual, really, for everyone. Although I did wonder at different points, is this what it's like? Is this what it's going to be like for the rest of my career? This is like crazy. Turns out it was that we were going through a global crisis at the time. It wasn't something even restricted to us at RBS. It was impacting people everywhere. So it was interesting to start your career at that point, and how it kind of shaped my perspective. I was thinking, this is crazy. Is this what a career in AML and financial crime will turn out to be? Let me put that one on hold for us. But then it was also a point where I thought, you know what, because all these crazy things are happening, and the environment was the way it was, and there was this uncertainty, I'm going to start studying. So I started my journey on learning more, and did some certificates in AML and a diploma in AML, which allowed me to move to the next team, which for me, within RBS on a secondment, and then later more permanently, was basically investigations. So it was actually, this is really cool. Like, all of a sudden, I had that sense of adventure come back again, where I'm like, cool, like, there's a whole thing here. We need to start looking at the transaction monitoring, and we need to do like more screening, and we're building a picture. All these different interactions started coming. But I would say then, and I would still say now, for what it's worth, and for anyone who is thinking about a career more in AML, that I know it's not really referred to this nowadays so much, but KYC, and starting as a KYC analyst, was such a brilliant foundation, I think, because you start kind of picking up on some of the fundamentals, and I built from there. Just in a crazy time.
Yeah, sometimes we learn. No, I started my compliance career in 2013, so right after the crisis.
The other side.
But I did work for a bank at the time, but I was a executive assistant, and so I worked for Bear Stearns, actually, who then got bought out by JP Morgan. So I saw a lot of the craziness that happened there, and the transition from one bank culture to another. So it was pretty crazy. Yeah, my compliance career started after that, so I really didn't see. I guess I saw the effects of it, but kind of in a different way, not in real time like you did.
Yeah, but I think you kind of touch on it there. It's that culture and the environment, and those were the biggest factors for me. And I'm sure different people will tell you different things. That was, for me, it was a bit of a shocker. But we had a very strong, kind of well-connected, good team vibe at the time, and it also turned out to be. And I have to say this, of course, but it turned out to be the best job I ever got, because it's where I met my now wife. We were in the same team at RBS. So maybe I was a little bit distracted by my now wife at the time. But it was an important time for a lot of people. Yeah, I think it was more what we would talk to nowadays as like well-being and resilience. That's, for me, what 2007 was all about. But working in KYC, brilliant foundation, more customer due diligence, slurring, but CDD nowadays, I think it's an excellent foundation and career path.
Definitely, and I feel like it's an area that doesn't get enough love and attention, but it should. I mean, because that's where, that's the entry point of the customer into the business, and you need to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
You need to gather all the right documentation to prove, who that's the person or company they say they are. And I just feel like nowadays it's an afterthought, and you have people there that don't really understand the importance they have to the whole kind of life cycle. But yeah, I agree, that's a good path, as well, especially if you have the right training, because if you just thrown into it, then it just becomes any other job, and you're just saying, all right, well, I need this document because I need to tick the box. But when you really understand what's the need behind it and why it's so essential, I think, that makes you a better KYC officer, but then also helps down the line if there's any questions that any financial crime team has, they have the answers at hand, or at least then maybe we could go out and get them. But yeah, I get off my soapbox. I just think it's a neglected area that needs to kind of get its day in the sun. Oh, I think we lost audio. I don't hear you. I see your lips moving, but I didn't hear you.
Sorry.
There you go. Now I got you.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Technology, huh?
That's it's here to do. Drive us crazy.
Let's say children and technology in showbiz or something. Something like that. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it is very underappreciated. It is that entry point. It is a life cycle. Building profiles. People don't realize the importance of it. You think, but then some of the events that we run, customer due diligence is always such a popular topic amongst the people who know, I guess.
Yeah, and so we talked about early on in your career, kind of how you got into it, what you worked on, and now kind of it seems like the significant pivot in your career was around 2000, 2001, where you kind of, I guess, lack of a better term, launched yourself as an independent compliance consultant, while simultaneously moving into event production. So you kind of highlighted some of that before, why you went into that, but can you walk us through that decision and what made you realize compliance needed a creative edge?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to sound like a bit of a broken record, but around that time I was made redundant, and at RBS actually I was made redundant there too. So I think funny for maybe our generation, I think I've been made redundant three times in my career, and the most recent was kind of the catalyst for everything we're discussing right now. I was made redundant from the bank I was working at here in South Africa. I don't know, like sometimes it might have been a bit of a, not intended, but kind of a bit rebellious of me that when we were looking at like frameworks and programs and governance, and that was very much my sweet spot, building out various like training programs, monitoring programs, looking at policies and different ways of doing things. So it kind of edged maybe into what we refer to in the corporate environment as like change management.
Right.
So the way my brain is working, I'm like, oh no, you know what? I think I could tweak it here and tweak it there. What do you think? Or no, this e-learning isn't cutting the mustard. When you go and walk the floor and talk to people, you realize that maybe you should be talking to them one-on-one, and it's going to land and get that connection, and there's that relevance because you're doing something a bit differently. Whilst doing those things, I may have thought that I'm changing the whole world here. This is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Everyone's going to love it. It doesn't quite always work out that way, and for good reason. But that's kind of, I think, my adventurous nature and wanting to not make an adventure out of everything. Where and that make a plan element, like changing culture from the UK to South Africa, and you're like, oh no, it's much more direct and entrepreneurial. And these things started to rub off for me. I think the more that I lived in South Africa, the more kind of driven I was to look at these things and not to try and change something overnight, but put suggestions forward. So, well, I think, could this work better? So these things started to happen, like whilst I was working, and some of them were adopted, others weren't. I think I love like coming up with ideas. Ideation is maybe the right word. I might lose that and not score any points in the Scrabble game. I think that's what it is. Coming up with ideas. That moment was sort of driven by I have a young family. I need to do something. I need to get back in the job market. I need an income. So I started to consult independently and start working with small consulting firms, make use of kind of the skills I do have. And I know we've spoken about it before. I've worked in a few different areas, so I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. No, I can do that. Yeah, no, I can do that. I can understand where the connection points are. Might not be able to go down as deep, but I can connect and I can talk about a lot of things. Done quite a few things pretty well. I'd like to think anyway, but anyone wants to do any background checks, please feel free to do so and check that is the case. But I kind of weaved my way in to start consulting, more out of that responsibility because I want to be a good father and a good husband, as we all do. And that's kind of where that came. And then kind of had this motivation, as I was mentioning earlier, to do that webinar series. And that's kind of where it all started, really, and other things that drove it. And I realized that, wait a minute, whether it's training or program or policy documents or events, there are different ways of trying to connect with people to drive actual outcomes and change mindsets and maybe just deliver a better, memorable experience. So someone benefits from it somehow, whether it's personally or they can do their job better, or maybe it inspires them to take action. Then great. Then I feel like I've done a good job. And then you start rubbing shoulders with other people. My favorite creative people in the compliance space, and I'm sure a lot of listeners will know of him, is a guy called Christian Hunt, and he's called Human Risk. I love the way that he thinks. It's also a little rebellious in a good way, because he's looking at things differently. And I really like that concept. And I think that's what drives the need for a creative edge, is to connect with people. Because you have to admit sometimes that there's been this, maybe not now, but in the past, kind of persona around compliance that we're all boring and we're all taskmasters and we're there just to kind of annoy people day by day. And I've been cooking up plans how I'm going to annoy that person tomorrow. You guys aren't so bad, or you've got a sense of humor, or oh, you do that too. So I think just being a bit more human, maybe the way that Christian does things and trying to connect. But I have my own way of looking at it. But I also think when you see others, you're like, yeah, that works. Yeah. Well, maybe I don't think I'm a rebel without a cause, because I've definitely got the cause, and I don't think I'm a rebel, but I do think that we can do different things within compliance to, in the AML space. They talk about effectiveness. Well, if we take that word effectiveness and apply it to compliance as a whole, how do you make sure people do the right things at the right times, make it memorable, connect with people? And my tool for that still is, I hope, creativity.
I mean, it's definitely something that I think your passion shines through in the work that you do. And that's also inspiring to us at NFCP, right? Because, I mean, it's about trying to connect with people and also find creative ways to do it, right? Because we don't want to just take something for the sake of just only regurgitating. We want to bring people's attention to certain things, and sometimes it's not, if you just put it in text, people don't really read it, they gloss over it, right? So then you're like, okay, maybe I do a video, but is that the right thing, or do we need to do some flashy like Canva maybe thing? So yeah, I mean, the creativity is part of it, and I think that challenge of really trying to get people interested or teach somebody something, but also finding the right way to do it and the right medium to do it, that's also challenging but also exciting at the same time.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, if you had in your school career, but there was maybe like a teacher at school or university or college or anything else that you were doing outside of that, but someone who just connected with you and did things in a certain way, or maybe just took the time and the effort to do something a little bit different for you, you remember that, and it kind of builds trust. It inspires you to do things. I spent most of my time in my corporate career walking the floor, in between doing other stuff, because I built all the relationships where I needed to. 2 or 3 of the mentors that I've had during my career in the UK and then in South Africa, first thing that they basically said in different ways, but was, you are the trusted advisor to your business and your stakeholders. Figure that bit out. So I was like, okay, I think I got you. So, how do you build trust? Well, make myself visible, stop people's desks, talk to them. I started something, and I'm sure many other people have done similar things, but we called it the compliance surgery. So twice a week, it's out a meeting room. Anyone who wanted to come in and talk about something, free to do so. Maybe they wanted to do it in more of a private way, but you were kind of building trust. I think when the trust is there, even if people don't like something you've done, or maybe they don't even like you, they trust that you will do the right thing. You're doing something for the right reason. And you need a driver behind that. People do things in different ways. I learn that more and more as I get older and older. And for me, it's about people and, thinking differently, trying to anyway.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I guess now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about the work you're doing with the company you founded, so the Creative Compliance Officer. Your tagline is Compliance Reimagined. I guess that also you've kind of explained why your passion is around that, because of being creative and all that. I guess digging a bit deeper into that, what does reimagining compliance actually mean to you, and how do you think the industry needs it?
It's a great question, Louis. Because I know that's a bold statement on my part. Imagined, really? Compliance hasn't changed? No, it hasn't. Like, compliance hasn't particularly changed much. Financial crime, yes, like you get different themes and typologies and different things are happening at different times, but the fundamentals don't really change for me.
Right.
And that's one school of thought, and there are going to be others. So really, for me, the reimagine bit is all around the connection and the connection points, and how do I better connect with people depending on what the brief happens to be. For some clients, like the ICA, for example, when you're running a ICA webinar, typically your main objective for the members and others who might be joining is, are you helping them do their job better? So it's got a very practical element to it, or we try to make it very practical. So there's this theory, and more you'll see people maybe not literally, but if we play it out, you might see people giving themselves a tap on the shoulder, tap on the back. That's cool. That's cool. A big sigh of relief, or someone's eyebrows going up because they're like, need to go back to the office and well, some people still do that. I know a lot of us work remotely, but go back to the office and talk to people because maybe we missed that. But it's good because we're trying to make sure that people are thinking and acting in the right way, which an association like the ICA wants to achieve. We want to upskill and uplift, like you had said. I think that's a brilliant word. Others, and I love this, for everyone listening, Louis has joined a couple of ICA webinars. I hope he joins more, and he's spoken at conferences. In the last one, Louis used the term brave, and I think that's so important because it's very critical. Like, we shouldn't not be, not just for compliance work, but that's a good lesson for life, I think, there, Louis, without getting too philosophical here. You're right, and you're spot on. And for other events, when you're trying to put something together, so like reimagining, it's a call to action. So you're actually you're trying to encourage people to be brave. So it's not a one size fits all, I don't think. We've, the Creative Compliance Cell, also looked at things like training, governance, structures. Most of the events had the opportunity, which has been so great, to work with some legends, I would say, legends in the field of financial crime, especially in South Africa. There was a gentleman called Roy Melnick, who was the head of ABSA compliance. He had a couple of hundred units underneath him. It was Pan-Africa. He was in the South African police service for a number of years, special investigations. Through the compliance officer, I've had the opportunity to work with people like Roy, same room as Roy, because he knows so much. But I feed off of that, because you see that the fundamentals never change, but he's smart enough to know where to tune things here or there. And even a little tweak here or there, that's a reimagine for me. Tweaking it here or there. It doesn't have to be this big bold thing. It could be a little bit here, a little bit there. And whether it's events or training or governance or any key compliance process, that's always been my thing. But now I do it for the creative compliance officer, and I'm not being maybe part rebel in an office where I'm like, hey guys, I've got this idea. Maybe we can tweak this and we can do that. And you know what? I think it might work. It's always been there, and it's something that drives me with the creative compliance work. It's a driver, I think, that's something that I want to achieve, not for ego, for something good, that it means that people are doing things better, and love the premise of compliance and the fact that you are trying to make the world a bit better, a better place. That's my thing. I don't know. Do you? If mine is reimagined, what would yours be, Louis? What drives you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. That we've had this framework and approach for so long now, and we see now where it's worked and where it hasn't worked. But there seems to be this approach of just still moving in the same direction, even though you can do things in different ways. So the way I envision kind of compliance reimagined is, maybe using the word you said I use, is being brave and trying to figure out new ways to maybe become more compliant, or find ways to figure out what the criminal's doing, instead of just saying, well, we've had this framework for so long and we're just going to stick to it. let's figure out new ways to do it, right? Not totally throw out the old ways, but maybe work in some parallels in a way to say, okay, let's test some ideas, like maybe just like a sandbox to say, let's have some ideas, let's see what we could do differently. And it might work, and then you could implement it into your normal program. But I don't know, that's kind of my impression of how it would look like in my mind, and how I think it would reinvigorate even the next generation of compliance officers coming behind us, not just
Exactly.
continuing the same old, but really trying to learn from the past and push it forward.
Exactly. And I think, it's a great way of putting it. It's not always taking the same path. I think sometimes you do need to take the same path, but other times you can see it's not working anymore. So take a new one, find a new one, build a new one. Yeah. And I think you're always, I think it's Elon Musk, he talks about fundamental principles, like breaking something down, and that you might go and look at something else. So I think for any rugby fans, he was the rugby coach of Japan at the time, and later in his career, I can't think of the guy's name. He coached England, but for inspiration, he went to look at. It's a beautiful game, Louis. He went to go and watch Barcelona play. I think when Pep Guardiola was still there, he was looking at the fundamental ways in which they passed the ball.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to reapply that to rugby. And in that year, I think it may have been when they even hosted. But I'm sure someone will correct me and maybe put the right thing in the comments. Please do. And he applied it, and he got success from it. You're mad, and there are so many different things like that in history where someone you're mad, and then it's an everyday thing. So I love innovation, and there's one thing I would highly recommend, because all we're talking about now, I think it's about kind of knowing yourself and that identity. There's something called Clifton Strengths, and I think the organization is called Gallup. There's someone who ran kind of the test with me and done it with lots of people in South Africa. I will name drop his name. Simon Hurry, great guy. Play Nicely is his organization. He and his wife Dee. So a husband-wife team, Louis, Simon, Hurry. You go through all these scenarios, and you maybe have 20 to 30 seconds to answer the question, like which or this like you, and you go through and you do it. And it's so clever, because the output of that is it gives you your strengths, or like your DNA. There are about 30 or so in total, but you usually get your top 5.
Okay.
One of the things in my top 5 was a futuristic thinker, amongst a learner. Learner was actually my top. I think I had responsibility, accountability. What's the other one? Includer. So this gave me a bit of a picture to whom I am.
Right.
And maybe how I'm discussing things now, that I do try and be a little bit creative, and I do like to kind of bring everyone together. And it's the compliance element. I do try and be like responsible and all that. And I'm a learner. And I think any compliance professional, sanctions, financial crime learner is central. And these are all the key ingredients that I have. I'd encourage anyone, when we're talking about imagination, reimagining, all these different things, or what you just want to figure out what you are, to do something like that. Because it's a little bit, it freaked me out a little bit, and I think it will with others, because it's like, have you been following me around? How do you know this about me? It's so spot on. I've answered 100 questions, and then I bet you do this, don't you? No, yeah, I do. But like, how do you know that? There's others. There's a great book called it's Finding Your Element. It's that, and you need that driver. And I just realized, I think that creativity is a driver for me, and I feed off it. And just myself, and trying to come up with ideas off other people, and that gives me energy. That's what it means to me. But to others, lots of great advice. But one piece of advice would be to do something like that.
Yeah, great advice. I mean, I think, at least from my perspective, it's people, not just in financial crime, but in other areas and expertise, you kind of sometimes feel yourself needing to just fit the mold wherever you go, because you don't want to stand out, or because you don't want to rock the boat too much. But yeah, there's just something about just being comfortable with who you are and just standing out and just saying, okay, I want to do things differently. I think differently. So why do I have to mask and pretend to be something else? Because we don't always have to be the same. And I think most good teams operate when you think differently, because then, nobody misses anything. If everybody has a one-track mind and the blinders on, normally that's when you miss something. But if you have people that have different strengths and, you know, different ideas, that's when you're usually hitting on all cylinders, because now you have this kind of 360 view. But yeah, I don't know.
Oh, you're right. I think that's how things can be engineered, for want of a better word, that you need a little bit of everything. Everyone shouldn't be the same. I do admire people who work through to an MLRO position or a chief compliance officer. I think that's fantastic, and I think that's real dedication, and I really admire. But I think for many people, and people who are at the start of their careers, don't necessarily think that you have to do the same. There's so much more out there, and we shouldn't all be the same.
Right.
You want to be challenged and you want to be inspired, but how can you be challenged or inspired by a whole bunch of what's the word? Like duplicates, you know?
Right.
Like this team of clones. You don't need a team of clones. You need different people. That's what makes a strong team. So yeah, I think you're right. You're right. And be brave should be central to that. Whatever you're trying to be creative, be brave. Like if you're trying to reimagine, be brave. If you're trying to push something forward, be brave. If you think you should be going in this direction, be brave. You have the underlying driver there, Louis. That's a key ingredient.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately can't take full credit for that. I first heard that in a conference a year or two ago, by Sabina, who is the head of fin crime at uni. It's a small firm or small bank, I should say, in Sweden, and that really hit home for me. I was like, and I even tell her every time I see her, I was like, you know, that one time you said that, now I have to use it. I haven't trademarked it, but I use it so much because, like you said, it could go for every like bit of what you do in work or in personal life. It's just, you know, sometimes you just have to be brave and try to, you know, just go for it.
Absolutely. And you know that moment, how you just described it, you heard that said, and then connected with you.
Yeah.
That is a reimagining part when it comes to events. It's that's the moment. That's the moment. That is when you're like, yep, thumbs up. I think we did it. Because it's never, I mean, I talk about like, you know, this is it, and I'm driving all this. I think the other thing around events is that there's lots of, especially in like bigger organizations, there's a whole team of different people doing different things, but you need these personalities to push it forward. And then if the end of it, you're going to have a moment like you did with Be Brave, and it connected with you and it stayed with you and it inspired you and it encouraged you to think and act differently, then that person and their head, and that's success, I think.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so changing gears a bit. You know, you've worked in different jurisdictions. Obviously, you worked in the UK, you've worked in Joburg, and probably even some other countries within those jurisdictions. But I guess, you know, we kind of touched a bit on culture earlier. So I'm just curious, working, you know, from these different countries and jurisdictions, what, I guess, how can I phrase this? Has any of those cultures influenced your approach to compliance and risk? Or like which one stood out to you? Did one do it right? Is it a blend that you just felt like, I took a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and this is how you internalized it? I'm just curious if you could share a bit on that.
No, absolutely. I think a huge driver in my career has been that I've been fortunate enough to work in different countries and experience different cultures. And there's definitely a different way of doing things in the different places I've been in. One of the most interesting lessons for me, I think, has been perception, like general perception. So coming from the UK and, for example, working in South Africa, and then towards the end of my current career in a corporate environment, being the compliance advisor to the UK business, which was outsourced to Joburg. And then you've got two teams that you're working with. You've got the UK and you've got South Africa, and you are that person in between. I had similar things when I worked for another bank here before. That's where I did a lot more travel, like Pan-Africa. You always, not always, that's the wrong word, but there does seem to be a tendency, certainly in my experience, there's like this big brother effect. Right. So you're like, we are the golden standard. So everything we do is definitely going to be better than what you guys are doing. I'm like, yeah, we are the golden standard. You like kind of jump on that a little bit, and you're looking around. And I used to travel a fair bit. It was very humbling because, especially like through my travels through Africa, come back. I've done like a risk assessment for a couple of weeks. I've been walking around the various teams and having different conversations. I don't know how many steps I've done, but you'll hear the term walking around a lot because I know it's a big thing for me is people, and I'm always walking around and trying to develop those relationships because I feel like people open up a bit more and you get to know more and they trust you more and they share more with you. And when things are great, they share them with you. When things are not great, maybe there's some sort of breach or incident, they'll come to you and they tell you. I've seen other scenarios where they might brush those things under the carpet and then you find out a little bit later and it gets way more. The humbling thing of my travels where when walking around, I was finding out that, wow, in terms of control effectiveness and risk management, what's your feedback, Elliot? What can we do to help? I don't think it's so much what we can do to help. I think it might actually be what the team in that office can do to help us. Sorry, they're doing it better. It's humbling that you assume that you come from a more established environment. Right. You just assume on paper that the next is not going to be, and that you're there to teach lessons and make it better. So there's that humbling aspect that I no longer think like that. We go there to learn as well as maybe teach. Mm-hmm. The UK I found is another good thing, but it's got a lot of structure. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of structure around things and things are very formal in a good way. There's that kind of respect and things happen in certain ways. South Africa has a very entrepreneurial way of doing things. Also then kind of braveness, I think. Mm-hmm. That's where the big brave thing started to come in. It still does now. In traveling around different countries, it's that cultural thing for me, where you can always learn something. Always learning, I think, would be my biggest lesson. And then it's like, how do I apply that? Mm-hmm. Like, coach, you went to watch Barcelona. I'm like, oh, that looks good. Like, maybe I can use that. It's that curiosity-ness to learning, I think, has taught me so much, not just in compliance, but in life, that if you spent your whole life in one place or one country and you go to the next, you're like, oh, like this is hugely different. What do you mean you don't do it like that? That's how we do it. It's just that openness, I think, is the biggest thing I've learned, and try to apply and still apply. That you're like, oh, wow, that's how you do a risk assessment. Oh, that's how you deliver training. Oh, interesting. All these different things. It's being willing to learn and listen. Yeah. We're doing a lot of talking, but listening is true. Yeah, it's a good answer. The US and Denmark, have you encountered similar things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a different culture, both work-wise and the way they look at risk and compliance, for sure. And yeah, there's no silver bullet. So I would say that, some things the US generally does, I would say, better than the Nordics, but then vice versa. I think the Nordics do things better. So I guess to give a quick example on that is I feel the Nordics really stick by the 3 lines of defense, and they try their best not to blur the lines, where in the US, I feel like the second line sometimes does a lot of the first line work. Or they 1.5. Yeah, exactly. They make decisions that they shouldn't. They should be advising and not really making decisions. But then how the Nordics, and then I guess flipping it, when you live and work in the US and the UK, you're used to not trusting people, and in the Nordics, they're very trusting. So I feel like they need to wake up to the fact that there's bad actors everywhere, even though they have a trusting society, and even though they're technically a low-risk jurisdiction, bad things happen everywhere. So you just need to have your guard up a little bit, ask the right questions, even though you might not feel it's necessary, but at least you're getting the right information to make the right assessments. So yeah, that was a kind of a quick thought on that from my side.
No, it's interesting. Like even now, like listening to you saying it, yeah. I think as long as with any of these things in life, if they make you think, then I think it's a good thing. Yeah. And hopefully good things happen as a result. But yeah, there's always a lesson to be learned. I've learned that one.
Cool. And as we're running out of time, there's at least one last question I have for you. But for compliance professionals that are listening to this and watching us, hopefully their eyes are not hurting from looking at me. I know I'm not easy on the eyes. No, don't lie. We've been honest this whole time. So yeah, for compliance professionals listening to us, who might feel stuck in traditional roles, or want to bring more creativity into their work, what advice would you give them based on your journey, besides being brave?
Yeah, I honestly think that is not just going to say that, but I do that is the foundation, because I think we can have good ideas and we never act on them. Everyone wants that silver bullet, like you were talking about earlier. Me too. We all want to know exactly what we should be doing, or do I take my talent, because I'm not quite sure what my talent is. I'm going to do that's something that means I'm going to maximize my talent and I'm going to be the best. I mean, who doesn't want to discover that? Being brave, being curious. If you are curious about wanting to move into a different area, and that's a question I've been asked quite a lot over the last sort of 10 years in a work environment and via the likes of LinkedIn and events. How? Why? Firstly, great question. What's driven me has been a lot by circumstance. So sometimes I haven't intentionally gone to do something. I've been pushed.
Right.
And that's where the brave bit comes in, because you're like, well, I'm gonna do it. Different things I think that people could do if they're interested is look at speaking with people, taking courses, looking at different qualifications, trying to get a flavor for something. But to do something, like, don't be scared. When I was early on in my career and I got the secondment, that's because I asked questions and I was studying. I was doing everything.
Boy.
I want to be there, like super enthusiastic. I did get that opportunity. I know that doesn't always happen, but it would be that really your career can happen for a long time. So don't be too hasty. Think about it. If something gives you energy and enthusiasm, then don't ignore it. If people are like, well, how did Elliot go from compliance to events? I want to do events. You're very welcome to talk with me, and I will try and give you some advice who's watching, and try and kind of help in that way. But I would say start and do something with everything that's available now. Just try it.
Mm-hmm.
Try it. And that's why you have to be brave, Louie. I'm going to be quoting the person at the conference. Be curious, like scratch the itch. If there's an itch, scratch it, ignore it, because I think you might have regret. And who wants regrets? Because it could be something really great. Talk with people, keep learning, and try and do something and see what happens. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen, maybe it doesn't go as far as you want, maybe it explodes, maybe you learn something new and you get a new useful qualification which will help you get there. Maybe when you're doing the study and you realize, or you do something this really isn't for me, it sounded nice, but no, I don't like it. You get clarity throughout. I think it's so, don't ask, don't get. So don't be afraid to, if you're in a corporate environment, to maybe go and to conference and get an idea for it. But yeah, do it. I think, in short, do it. Don't not do it, because you might regret it, and don't regret it. Be bold, be brave, be curious, and make a plan. In on a South African term, but that's what it means. Make a plan. Do something. And I think is the biggest thing that I've learned in nearly 20 years is you don't know where life will take you, but kind of go with the flow and be brave. Like, take opportunities, find opportunities. Don't not do anything, because then I think you're stuck in limbo.
I think that's the new quote of the day. Do it, right? You just make a plan, do it. And as you said, you could test it out, and then at the end of the day, you might not like it. Or at the end of the day, it might be something great, but you never know unless you do it. So I agree.
Lived experience. I mean, you might know all the book stuff. I mean, it's just that film with Matt Damon and Robin Williams.
Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. And there's that one scene, and they talk about, I think it's the Sistine Chapel, and Matt Damon starts like rolling out all the facts, and this, that, the other, and Robin Williams is like, yeah, but do you know what it smells like? Do you know what that, because he's saying, well, you're very book smart, but you've never actually experienced it. The experience is the doing. Not do it as well, obviously, like do it, just do it. But to kind of make that a reference point, that movie is that there's a difference between reading about it and being smart on it and actually doing it. Because when it comes to the doing, you might realize that you love it and actually you're brilliant at it, or no, not for me.
Right. That's so true. And I think that also helps with kind of understanding a bit of what it is to be a compliance officer, right? Because in the beginning, it's very much, you're relying on book smarts or you're relying on the policies and procedures. But then if you stay in it long enough, you get this experience where you might fall in love with it, and then you pick up on these other things that are not written in any document. But you could say, okay, this is risky because of this, because I know, because I've seen it somewhere else, I've heard about it, and I'm applying that knowledge here. But without that previous experience, you could miss stuff because you've only been looking at the facts or whatever. I mean, whatever facts were presented to you might not be even complete facts. So you might know a lot philosophically, but when you're actually doing the work, it takes time to really build that experience.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost a chicken and the egg. This is where it's like, no, Elliot, you don't need that qualification. What you need to do is just gain the experience for 6 months, and it's the experience outweighs anything else. Like, yeah, but I want that qualification. That's sort of like where some of the wisdom comes in, because it is in the doing, but knowing also helps. And it's a journey, and it's sort of how you react, as you say, like working in compliance. It's that first time that your fingers get burned. What is it, Mike Tyson, who says, everyone's okay till they get punched in the face. Everyone's brave, and you get hooked. Like, or do you stay up? Do you fight back? And not that I'm suggesting that fists are thrown when you have a command, because they're not.
Right.
It's anyway. For me, what I learned is also when you've got that good leadership around you, they start spotting what you're good at. Yeah. And if they are a good leader, they're going to be like, hey, have you thought about looking at that? Why don't? And maybe you haven't recognized it yet. I think you can really benefit, as they say, sort of standing on the shoulder of giants, gaining from other people's experience. Most recently in my career, work with people who are industry leaders, sort of 40 years experience, 30 years experience. The ex-head of one of the ex-head of the FIU in South Africa, sitting up, and I paid to keep learning and think like you know everything, because you're 30, 40 years down, there's tons of stuff you don't know. So it's that growth, kind of growing into things that if you do take a hit. But funnily enough, Louie, even the people who've taken a hit, not literally, most people love it and want to stay in it.
Right. Yeah. So
it's
true.
Our career, but it's like a beautiful thing. How? Yeah. But wouldn't change it for the world. Go figure. I don't know.
Yeah. True. So true. Well, on that note, you're off the hot seat, Elliot. Thank you very much for joining us. Any last words before we sign off? Any last pearls? One last pearl? Yeah, I think it would be, be adventurous, be open-minded, keep learning, and just push forward. Don't be afraid to do something. And I'll go back to that phrase again, because I think there's so much in it, and it still interests me now. But make a plan. Keep pushing forwards. And yeah, I think if you keep going and listening, then good things will happen. But be brave and make a plan. Awesome. So thanks again to you, Elliot, for being with us. Thank you all that has tuned in or is watching this later on. And until next time, stay curious, stay brave, stay compliant. Take care, everyone, and happy holidays. Thank you. Bye-bye.